Good morning. I'm Vijay Madhvi. Let us start our new topic, that is flow control. Okay, this is one of the main important concept which we have in our CN second unit. Okay, now in the today's session, we'll learn about what is flow control and what is error control protocols. What is mean by flow control here? Like what is mean by flow control? It is a technique. It is a technique that generally observe the proper flow of data between the sender and receiver. That means whenever if we have a communication of data between the client and server, if we have a communication of data between the client and server, this flow control, it is going to observe whether the proper transmission of data is there or not between the sender and receiver. It will check. Okay. And this flow control, it is very essential because it is possible for the sender to transmit the information at very fast rate, and hence the receiver can receive this information and process it. Now here, for example, if we have the transmission of data, will be very fast. In the same manner, the receiver has to receive the information also, and it has to process it. Okay. And this can happen only if receiver has very high load of traffic as compared to the sender. Okay. Because here, for example, if the sender is transmitting the data at a data rate of like 5% or 10%, means the receiver has the capacity of more when compared to sender, because the receiver has to receive the data as well as it has to process the data also. Okay. And now what is meant by this flow control? It is a technique that generally observes the proper flow of data from the sender and the receiver. Okay. And now the flow control is basically, it is a technique that gives permission of two stations that are working and processing at different speeds. Okay. That means, see, between the two stations, we have this transmission of data. The main theme of flow control is what here? The transmission of the receiver side should be more than the transmission rate at the sender side. Okay. And now this flow control in data link layer, it simply restricts and coordinates the number of frames or amount of data the sender can send before it waits for an acknowledgement from the receiver. That means the sender will not wait for the acknowledgement from the receiver, one after the other, one after the other. The sender is transmitting the frame to the receiver. Okay. And now here, like, what is the main theme of this flow control? Already I have given here. Like, the flow control is generally observe the proper flow of data from sender to receiver. Okay. That means here the flow control is actually set of procedures and explain sender about how much data or frames it can transfer or transmit before the overwhelms the receiver. That means, see here, if the sender is transmitting 5 packets at a time, if the sender is transmitting 5 packets, means the receiver has to be ready with the 5 packets to receive in a fast manner when compared to the sender. Okay. And this will not overcome. Okay. And next, the receiving device also contains only limited amount of speed and memory to store the data. Okay. And next here, this is why receiving device should be able to tell or inform the sender about stopping the transmission or transferring the data on a temporary basis before it reaches to the limit. Okay. And now here, whenever if we are working with the flow control, for flow control, we have mainly two approaches. One is the feedback based flow control. Another one is the rate based flow control. Here we have two types of flow control. One is the feedback based flow control. Another one is the rate based flow control. But once again, I'm telling flow control means what? It is a technique that generally observe the proper flow of data from sender to the receiver. Okay. And here, that means here how the data is transmitting, how the flow of data is happening, that we can learn with this flow control technique. Here I have two main approaches. One is the feedback based flow control. Another one is the rate based flow control. Okay. Now we'll see what is meant by this feedback based flow control here. In this flow control, in this control technique, sender simply transmits the data. Okay. One after the other, the sender is transmitting the data or information or frames to the receiver. The receiver transmits data back to sender and also allows sender to transmit more amount of data. or tell sender about how receiver is processing or doing. That means simply I can say transmits data or frames after it received the acknowledgement from the user. For example, I have the sender is sending some data. Okay. And here the sender, it gets the acknowledgement. It is going to transmit the data. Once it gets acknowledgement, then only it is going to retransmit the next frame. Okay. Otherwise, it will not transmit. The sender is going to wait until it gets the acknowledgement from the receiver side. Okay. And what is mean with this rate-based flow control? In this control technique, usually when sender sends or transfer data at faster speed, or receiver is not being able to receive the data at the capacity, okay, then mechanism known as built-in mechanism in protocol will just limit or restrict the overall rate at which the data or information is being transferred. Okay, that means see here, like here rate-based flow control means what? Here in this, for example, if the sender is sending the transmit data with a more and more speed, but at the time, if receiver is unable to accept the data, if it is unable to catch the speed, then the mechanism is going to be built. That is called as a built-in mechanism in protocol will just limit or restrict the overall rate. That means it is going to minimize the rate of the sender. For example, if sender is sending the 5 packets at a time, is here it is going to make, by using this built-in technology, the sender transmits that frame one after the other by taking some time space. Okay, this is called as a rate-based flow control. Okay, and now here, whenever we are working with the flow control, okay, this means this flow control is one of the technique in our 7, like we have 7 layers now: physical layer, data link layer, okay, and transport layer. Then here in the data link layer, the physical layer is having the data in the form of frames. The data link layer, what happens here? The transmission will be done from the physical layer. Okay. And next here at the data link layer in the flow control. Okay. Then we have 2 types of techniques. One is the stop and wait flow control. Another one is the sliding window flow control. Now we'll see what is meant by this stop and wait flow control. Here I have 2 techniques. One is the stop and wait flow control. Another one is the sliding window flow control. Now we'll see what is meant by stop and wait flow control. This is one of the easiest and simplest form of flow control. Okay. Here, whenever if we have a transmission of data, the stop and wait flow control, this is the easiest form of transmission flow control. Because in this method, the message or data is going to broken down into multiple frames. Okay. And if the receiver is showing the readiness to receive the frame, then only it is going to transmit the data. Here in this, for example, if I have a data, this data is going to be divided into frames. Okay. And then it is going to transmit this data. Here, this stop and wait flow control means this method is the easiest and simplest form of flow control. Okay. And in this method, what happens basically, the message is going to be broken down into n number of various frames. Okay. And then the receiver indicates its readiness to receive the frame of data. Okay. And next, here, what are the advantages of stop and wait flow control? Here in this method, it is easiest and simple. Okay, here this stop and wait flow control means it is easiest and simple. Okay, and each of the frame is checked and acknowledged. Okay, this method is very accurate. Okay, and next, what are the disadvantages of this stop and wait flow control? Here, this is very easy. Okay, and it is very simple, and the frames is going to be checked and acknowledged in a proper way. That means, see, if we are getting the acknowledgement in a proper way, automatically we can see that the transmission is going on in a perfect way. Okay. And what are the disadvantages of this stop and wait flow control? Here, this method is fairly slow. Okay. And in this, only one packet of frame can be sent at a time. Whenever you are having this stop and wait flow control, here we can transmit only one packet at a time. Okay. and it is very efficient and makes the transmission process very slow. Okay. And here it is inefficient. Why? Because it is inefficient. If it is transmitting the packets in a very slow manner, means we can say it is inefficient. Okay. And next is one of the important one. Here we have, I have told, we have two techniques. One is a stop and wait flow control. Another one is the sliding window flow control. Okay. And what is mean by this sliding window flow control? Here, this method is required when reliable in-order delivery of packets or frames is very much needed in the data link layer. Okay, that means I can say it is a point-to-point protocol, and that assumes that none of the other entities tries to communicate until the current data or frame gets transmitted. For example, if we have this transmission, once the transmission start going on, once this transmission is started, okay, this method is required when reliable in-order delivery of packets of frames is very much needed. That means whenever if we need a requirement of proper transmission, the best technique I can say is the sliding window flow control. And in this method, the sender transmits or send various frames, okay, or packets before receiving any acknowledgement. Okay, that means the sender will not wait for any acknowledgement. One after the other, one after the other. This method is going to transmit. Okay, in this method, both the sender and receiver agree total number of data frames. Okay, and after which the acknowledgement is needed to be transmitted. That means here the total number of frames are going to be transmitted in a continuous manner. Then after completion of all the tasks, then only we'll get the acknowledgement. Okay. And what are the advantages of this stop and wait flow control here? What are the advantages of this sliding window flow control? It when compared to this stop and wait flow control, this sliding window flow control is much better. Okay. And the efficiency is also going to be increased. And multiple frames can be sent at a time. Okay. And one after the other, we can send the multiple frames. And the main issue is complexity at the sender and receiver due to transmitting the multiple frames. If we are transmitting the multiple frames, then only we may have this issue. Okay. And the receiver might receive the data frames or packets out the sequence. Okay. Receiver might receive the data frames or packets out the sequence. These are the disadvantages. And in the next session, we'll continue learning about the sliding window flow control. Okay. All the best.